Good day and welcome to another special episode of the Offside Musings Podcast. On behalf of my co-host, Emeka Onyagwa, I'm delighted to welcome you to this episode. Today we're going to look at a bunch of developments in Nigeria. Some people are calling for the impeachment of President Muhammadu Buhari on account of the worsening security situation in the country. So we're going to look at that. We're going to look at the fact that more states are forming their own statewide security outfits again to grapple with the problem, the crisis indeed, of insecurity in their states. And we're going to look at this in terms of what it says about perhaps imperative of establishing state police within Nigeria. We're going to look also at the fact that President Muhammadu Buhari spent more than ₦1 billion at a time when Nigeria is in a financial crisis to buy 10 SUV vehicles for officials in the government of Niger Republic. We're going to look at the worsening financial crisis in the country with the Nigerian Central Bank being accused credibly by knowledgeable people of simply printing trillions of naira for the Nigerian government to meet the budget deficit. So in today's episode, we're going to be looking at these and other political developments as well as economic developments within the Nigerian state that is increasingly in an uneasy condition. You're welcome.
It's always an eventful day in Nigeria, as long as you're not on the phone with people in Nigeria, because that's a different case. Most times you end up crying. I end up crying at least.
Yeah.
So it's, it's crazy, man. Where did we even start from, Seth, today?
Well, I guess we talked about the calls for Buhari's impeachment. That some senators are insisting that the president has done an atrocious job as the commander-in-chief in terms of ensuring the security of lives and property within the Nigerian space. And so the question is, should he be impeached? And my take is that, I warned about 8 years ago, as Buhari was campaigning to be president. I warned that Buhari was going to prove to be a dud. I didn't think that Buhari was particularly bright as a military head of state. And when he was running prior to the 2015 election, basically Buhari was going around Nigeria raising brooms. And as I did tell Kayode Gundamisi in an interview on Ben Television in London, that to raise a broom is not a program. Okay, that to run a country takes imagination and takes thinking and takes intelligence, takes the design of the kind of society you would like to see come into being under your leadership. The changes that you want to make and define how those changes are going to impact positively on the lives of Nigerians. But, Nigerians, I guess, were persuaded by the false message of change. Again, the wooliness that goes for political discourse in our country. Because there are some situations where even when you're in a bad place, when somebody offers you change could actually be worse than your bad situation. So you have to always have the best information, evaluate that information in order to make a political choice. So for me, the question, should Buhari be impeached? My short answer would be, let's do it yesterday. But having said that, I don't want to stop at impeaching Buhari. I want to bring up an argument I've been making, for numerous times on this podcast, that Nigeria is in such bad shape. And when we say bad shape, Nigeria has been in bad shape for decades now.
Mm-hmm.
That the country has come to a moment of collapse. The country is comatose, and therefore, that if the members of the National Assembly are contemplating the impeachment of Buhari, they should go a step further and begin a conversation about constituting an emergency. I used to say emergency interim government. I will call it an emergency rescue apparatus.
I believe you said emergency transitional government. Yes.
So now I like to call it an emergency rescue government of experts in the different areas of the country to undertake the task, first of all, of determining, to start with, whether Nigerians even have the will to stay together. That's a fundamental question. If they do have that will, then we have to tackle the question of what constitutional arrangement is going to is going to see to the continuation of this contraption called Nigeria. And then we have to set up basic infrastructure in education, in our healthcare system, in our financial sector, a reform of our political processes, so that you don't have just brainless idiots who have stolen money coming around to buy the country as if the country were for sale.
Yeah. I'll start from saying, the first thing we're dealing with is this. So, I'll start from saying it's not even I believe it's more of a question of, should he go? Should he just, don't even, just find a way for the guy to leave, right?
He's not added anything to Nigeria, or he's added something. He's added something profoundly negative.
Yeah.
So this man has taken a country that was broken and is taking it to a state of almost irreparable brokenness.
Yeah.
Instead of healing any of those rifts, every sector of Nigeria, economic, security, law and order, infrastructure, has been left worse by this man than he found it.
Yeah, well, 100%. I think even he at this point in time was talking about leaving him, he's not staying, he's leaving. So I was thinking of, you've been saying this for a while. I was thinking about it. I also have a lot of work I have to do as well within this period. I was thinking about essentially the history of successful nation states that have navigated nation states or republics, or historical what we know in history. So to go into it, right, it's, if you go into history, you go into history of successful nation states, you go into history of, not to bore people with the details of all those things, whether it's Romans, the Greeks, whether it's whichever successful nation state you might think of, the Ottoman Turks, the Egyptians, whichever ones, you go into, move away from what the fable tales are, and you go into it, you see difficult situations in their history where they made decisions that nobody could tell how it was going to turn out, but they knew that they had to do something. And one of those things, that you look at maybe the Romans in terms of what they might have done, or the Egyptians, but one of those things that we might have to do as a country might be something akin to what either is America or the UK, or when I say the UK, England creating the UK has done, if you go into it, you take a look at it, you in the context it happened, there's zero guarantee. Just sitting down and like, okay, they have to do something. Nigeria is in that situation. Something needs to be done. What's happening is not working.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, clearly, and I understand that for some Nigerians, there's clearly a Buhari fatigue in the country. I was just reading my friend, the former Emir of Kano, Sanusi Lamido Sanusi, just said that not only has Buhari and his group wrecked the country, but they want Nigerians to be grateful to them for the job, and so I know that there is a fatigue about Buhari, and people just say, okay, let him just take his bad news and move on by next year, May of next year and all. And so, but again, as my co-host Emeka just proposed, we were at a critical point in our history. And I've made this point again and again in talking about the major political candidates. I have been clear that of all the candidates, Peter Obi is the one who has shown that he has any brain power to talk about the problems of the country. But I've also said to people that Peter Obi is not Magic Man. So much as he understands,
or Magic Mike to some.
Yeah.
There's a very stripper movie called Male Strippers. Anyway,
so as much as he has a grasp of the terrible state of the country, we have a situation now where another issue that we said we were going to discuss, where the Nigerian state is so bankrupt. The price of oil has been high for a while, but apparently the NNPC is not contributing any money to the national revenue stream in the country. And I think that part of it is because of all these, all the crisis again in that sector, right? That much of the oil that oil companies lift in Nigeria, much of it is stolen by rogue actors who happen to be so politically plugged in that the Nigerian state does not have the capacity or the will to stop them. I won't be surprised if some of them are ex-heads of states, ex-generals, highly connected people. But the truth of the matter is that at a time when the Nigerian state should be making a lot of money from oil, there is no money coming in from there. And so basically, so Nigerians understand this, if you are a civil servant in Nigeria, a federal civil servant or a state civil servant, and you are being paid your salary, basically the Nigerian government is printing money. Countries don't operate this way. And even when the US government does massive deficit budgeting and spending, it's because there is so much capacity embedded in the US economy that there is confidence, so people around the world are able to invest in the prospect of America remaining economically powerful. But Nigeria has nothing going for it. So when Nigeria prints a naira, there is nothing. There is no productive capacity to back that naira. It's just worthless paper being printed, which is why we now see politicians resort to the dollar as their go-to default mode of offering bribes, whether it's to delegates or to their supporters and so on. So we are at a point where the country has collapsed. When you have no money coming in, and you have to print it, that an Idi Amin level of of fiscal policy. Let's just, there's no money to pay. Go and print money and just give people. So the naira is becoming more and more worthless, and the nation's debt profile. Because when you print money, when the central bank prints money, it's a debt. The Nigerian government. So when they pay you, it's worthless, but they are owing this money. It's not free money. And so we have external indebtedness, we have domestic indebtedness, we have this deficit financing of recurrent budget, not capital projects, recurrent. So that in the end, we have to think seriously of pausing this thing that we pretend is a nation, or pausing this idea of we're going to have elections next year, and we will elect somebody and things will be good. I think Peter Obi will do the best job of the three major candidates: Tinubu, Atiku,
maybe, or even all the candidates. Yes, who cares?
Of all the candidates out there, right? But even the challenges that Peter Obi or any president is going to face will be so structurally deep, seismic in scale, that in the end the effect, so in the end, I think that we have to seriously contemplate this interim emergency rescue government. If people like Peter Obi are part of it and he can be in one sector of the government, that would be fine, but the problems of the country, so Buhari, the sooner Buhari quits the stage or is just removed from the stage, the better for this process, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't see, I just said it, I don't see what, even he himself agrees that he wants to go out as quickly as possible. So sitting down and taking a look at it is like, look, what's going to happen? How is it going to happen? More like, I don't even think he should be impeached. I think people should implore on him, like almost like Babangida was implored on to step down by some people, including Abacha, to step down. Well, wasn't implored on, but more or less, he had to step down. I think Buhari is at that stage where he needs to step down 100%. And they need to figure things out. The states just came out with their debt profile at CBN, legal states. For those who sit down, and another piece of evidence for those who sit down and talk about Tinubu as being a great distant. If you look at the breakdown of their debts, a lot of it is directly related to Tinubu, and a lot of it is also directly related to the people he put there. And if you don't need to, I won't even say you have to read in between the lines, because Tinubu runs and has run Lagos State since 1999. So all this is doing is over 1 point something billion. You think of how much money he spends. You think of the big states. Rivers owed a lot of money there. The who is who in Nigeria, and in terms of states.
These are oil producing states,
all owing so much money.
Oil producing states that have squandered the money they got from the
valuation accounts,
derivative principle, that gives them 13% of the country's earnings from oil, and yet they've gone out to borrow, which, by the way, borrowing money is not a bad thing. Okay, if you have an imagination and the capacity for wisely investing that money. The problem that we've always had with Nigerian government at the state and federal level is just the absolute absence of rigor in terms of determining that if we invest this amount, we're going to invest it properly, we're going to invest it in the right sectors, and then we have, before we borrow the money, we have thought through the question of how to turn that investment into productive activity that would ultimately not only pay itself, be self-paying, but add something significant to economic development. In Nigeria, we borrowed money for years and years on what they call rural electrification. That money is just pocketed by a few fools. There is no impact on rural electrification in the country. And I was just reading Buhari saying talking about the need for solar panels. So so this man is so bereft of ideas that he sits down and he thinks, let's bring in more solar panels and Nigeria will have regular electricity. It's just again, look, the young people in Nigeria and they.
For those that don't know, right? Yeah. Solar energy is the future. I'm not even going to argue that. If you want to argue that, that's fine. But we've seen what's happening currently. Mm-hmm. We've seen
not just solar energy though, alternative sources
which will become the main.
In the mix, wind is in the mix.
Yeah, they will become the future, 100%.
Even nuclear
will be. I don't even call nuclear alternative, but I think it probably will be hydrogen, creating energy from water, essentially. But if you look at what's happening now, if you look at how Europe, even America, even where we live, Indian power wells, they shut down the nuclear plants. They shut down a lot of the nuclear plants in
Europe
because they had this mindset of Chernobyl, all these disasters that's happened in Europe, and they decided, they want to go through this clean energy thing. And what's affecting them now? They felt gas is going to be, and it's fine. I think they'll eventually reach a settlement in Ukraine. They'll eventually come back together and all those things. But the key point of this is that all those there, wind, solar, and so on, were not ready for prime time.
No.
I was in Germany 2 months, 3 months ago. They have massive. I was in Bavaria. They have massive. When I say massive solar.
When you are flying into any part of Germany, just aerially, you see all these windmills and so on and so forth all over the place.
Yeah.
In a sense, making the the landscape look quite ugly. And for all the trillions of dollars that have been put into these technologies, the yield is still very, very modest.
Yeah.
It's going to. I hope that I believe that the technology is going to get better, and so on and so forth. But Nigeria, as an oil-producing country, as a country that has rivers and bodies of water that has ample sun and so on, if we had over the years leadership that could use its imagination, Nigeria would not be where it is today. In terms
African before Asian, but
yeah.
Anyway.
That's true. But
yeah.
So with all kinds of anxieties and apologies, we use that pejorative voodoo economics. But this is a woman who is an accountant and should perhaps never have been finance minister of a country like Nigeria, with its just if you look at the era of Okonjo-Iweala, for example, and if you look at some other people who have occupied that office, that this woman comes eminently unqualified to be the finance minister. And so under her management, that basically the Nigerian government has turned to the central bank to print it money, just to print whatever the country needs month after month. This is the path to the Zimbabweanization of Nigeria.
That's not a good thing.
And we do know that there was a time when in Zimbabwe, to go buy a loaf of bread, literally you had to carry the cash in a wheelbarrow. because that's how worthless the Zimbabwean dollar had become, for all kinds of reasons. Robert Mugabe, faced all kinds of challenges, some of them self-inflicted, some of them through
External
pressures,
yes.
that were asserted by the international community because of his domestic policies.
Essentially, the land reform.
The land reform
yes.
Issue. But, so if Nigeria continues to print money, there'll come a time when even groundnut sellers will stop accepting it. If you want to buy groundnut, they'll have you go produce dollar or CDs or whatever. So it's a very, very bad situation. And again, something that calls for, I know that Premium Times reported that Nigerian governors held a meeting with President Buhari and spoke against that mode of deficit financing of the Nigerian government's budget. Mm-hmm. And they proposed turning in, I think it's now in excess of 19 trillion in such disbursements by the central bank. So they proposed that it be turned into a 100-year bond at 1%. So interesting. And there's a precedent. I think some European countries have attempted such issuance of bonds on their public debt. But the question is, the way Nigeria is going now, do Nigerians even have confidence that Nigeria will be there in 10 years? Much less investors investing in a 100-year bond issued by the Nigerian government. I personally would not do it. But, so I sort of felt that this was an attempt by the governors to push down the down the road an economic crisis that is unprecedented, so that in 100 years we're all dead. Most of us at any rate. Some people will.
Some of us might still be alive.
Yeah. Maybe if you're going to be 101. Yeah. So the whole idea of printing money is as I said before, is reminiscent of Idi Amin's kind of
policies,
physical policy.
It was famous in that movie where it was like,
if there's no money, go and print it.
Yes, it was, and it was actually an accurate line too, by the way, more 100%. So it's man, the sad part, and I hope a lot of people will keep tuning in and understanding the reality of what America calls quantitative easing, or what the Europeans do to what Nigeria is doing. And it's not going to all the mechanisms of how these things work or the imbalance in the world. No, it's just telling you, like, some people can do it and call it a fancy name. You can't. I hate to be the bearer. It's reality. You just can't. And even when those people do it with their mechanisms and all that, and you could go into it and all that and be like, yeah, these guys are doing it. There's no longer gold standard. On and on and on. Yes, you're right. There's no gold standard. There's no this. There's no that. But they have their own mechanisms of doing it. Essentially creating an O on the balance sheets, whatever. But the way these countries end up doing it in Nigeria, as we saw it in Sri Lanka, they tried to do the same thing. The whole place has collapsed. They're talking of Bangladesh now, and the same thing. It's not going to work for Nigeria. It can't. You can't. The way Emirates last week announced that they are reduction of flights to Nigeria. I was looking at the flight to Nigeria end of this week, and it's giving me like 2 stops.
Yeah.
Something that used to be like at worst one stop, you go to Dubai, Abu Dhabi rather, and now it's giving me two stops. Not even Abu Dhabi, it's giving me different places. They can't get same thing happened with United. Examples: these are companies that are finding it near impossible
to remove their money,
and these are providing jobs, economic activities, you name it, tourists coming in, money coming out from that. But they can't even do it. They can't. It's to give you a sense that that these companies who are vital, and some oil companies still have pulled out from Nigeria, if I'm not wrong.
Some oil companies at least have sold a lot of their assets to Nigerians, and the Nigerians who bought those assets are are not very happy.
Yeah,
because suddenly you're seeing that in the Nigerian sector, oil sector is being hijacked by a bunch of non-state actors, but who have tentacles in the state and who are protected by the state, so they might as well be state actors. So you have a legitimate business in oil exploration, and you find that you are being undercut by people who are very low overhead, and they have access to more oil than you, who are doing it legitimately. So the country is really,
and you're looking at a situation where a lot of these guys too are having that foreign exchange problem too. So it's just bringing that up is just to tell you that even the Nigerians doing the business having problems. Oil, I mean, it's still black gold.
Yes.
You get the concept of calling it black gold. It's not like, you get the concept. It's still black gold. It's still having a problem getting foreign exchange. So you imagine people coming in by flights having problems. You're having people coming in by other things having problems. You're having less and less businesses being able to come into Nigeria. So it's at that point where Ghana was before, and Ghana might be coming to, but that's a whole different conversation because they also are having IMF problems because they have to go get loans and stuff. So it's at that point. So it's a situation where, not to bore you with the mechanisms, the mechanics of it. It's a problem. The way things are happening now. It was there. United pulled out of Nigeria. A lot of companies, I think 7 years ago, if I'm not wrong, they tried to come back now. They are still having the same problems. It's getting harder and harder for people. And we don't seem to understand. The finance minister is just ordering the central bank to print money. She doesn't clearly has a grasp of. I don't know about her qualifications, but I certainly don't think an accountant should be the finance minister. Although I wouldn't want to insult the previous lady, Kemi Adeosu, who was also an accountant, by the way. And I felt she was ill-equipped, but she wasn't removed for that. She was framed in a different way and taken out of office. But I don't feel an accountant should be, and in this case, it's showing 100%. So, the next thing we're going to talk about is
Benue State just formed what they call, I think they called it the security volunteer group. Security volunteer group, and the state governor Samuel Adam said at the unveiling of this new security outfit, I hope that's the name, said at the unveiling that the state would go and purchase AK-47s, and other states, Ondo, Zamfara, Anambra in the past, I don't know how it's happening now, Imo State, have set up their own security outfits. So of course, this is in response to the really devastating state of security in all parts of the country, and I know that we're planning to look at the BBC documentary about insecurity in Nigeria. which has riled up the Nigerian government and is threatening to impose all kinds of sanctions, including perhaps the expulsion of the BBC from Nigeria. So that's another separate program that we'll look at systematically. But apparently, in addition to the scale of insecurity that is visible out there, there are indeed huge security crises in Nigeria that are not publicized. And I was speaking with somebody who is in the know within Nigeria, and he explained that the Buhari government actually tries to suppress media reports of some of the country's security challenges, especially bandits who go and kidnap people for ransom and so on. And the government's argument is that media reports tend to sort of provide fuel for these criminals. But that should not be the way to address these things. You know, the fact that these criminals are able to attack at will any section of the country, including Katsina, the home state of the president, including the convoy, security convoy of the president was attacked. And, you know, Mangonu, the president's, the Nigerian National Security Advisor, you know, has acknowledged that the president's convoy was attacked and that some of the security personnel were killed. As we speak, nobody has accounted for who carried out the attacks. Just today, Punch was reporting that I think 140 or so, perhaps even more, potential invaders were accosted in Ondo State, again by Amotekun, which is the sort of the southwestern vigilante or security group and so on. So the question then is, if the federal government has a monopoly on law enforcement, so we have no state police in Nigeria, and the federal government is failing to address, to stop terror attacks throughout the country, to arrest terrorists, to prosecute any terrorists, and so on, then we need to revisit the whole question of state police, which people have had all kinds of objections to, because of, you know, some critics feel that this will give another layer of power to state governors who might abuse those outfits and use them against their political opponents and so on and so forth. But the Nigerian government, the presidents in our country, people who are close to the presidents have misused federal monopoly on law enforcement to punish their political opponents in the states as well as the federal level. But at any rate, the challenges that we face today should be more systematically addressed, both at the federal level as well as the state level. So I'm a bit uneasy about putting together a ragtag outfit and calling it a volunteer guards, or a bubago or whatever, you know, that you're called. Because these people are not well trained, not that the Nigerian police are trained, you know. So again, it's all a narrative of a country that has, over the decades of its being, allowed every institution to deteriorate to the point of absolute chaos.
Yeah. You know, I know the thoughts about those things. People feel like, it's going to be exactly what is stated. Like, the governors or the local government chairmans are going to have undue influence and it's going to become a kingdom, but well, not a kingdom. It's going to become a enclave of some sort. But for me, I've always felt, and I still feel like it should be there. Historically, stronger societies grow from those things. Historically, I don't think necessarily will always end well. 100%. I think whether it's just that, whether it's guns, whether it's there'll always be. Especially when you start off after such a long time, because if you go back in history in Nigeria, the British, one of the first things they did in the southeast and even in the north too, was to take all the weapons from the people, disarm the population, outright disarming, outright this thing, and outright. I would always state it was paired with the taken out of history, even back from 1920s, 1930s, when the Ekulumeku wars were going on in Nigeria. They were, once they disarmed you, once they got to you, they would disarm you. Once they disarmed you, they would introduce their education and brand it in a certain way. And part of that brand, the main part of that education was to strip you from your previous consciousness, make sure you were separate from it. So you didn't really know that you've had guns, you've had all these things, you've had what people now term in a pejorative way, vigilantes. You've had community policing. I think it's a term I'd rather even use personally. You've had community policing long before colonial power showed up. But I think the absence of that for the last, I'm not going to tell you that, we did it before the 1920s, then, automatically snapping. No, the absence of that for a long time is going to create a situation where it's going to be a very uncomfortable adjustment to the reality. I have got no, but I think, if you've had a situation like that for the longest time, I think if you're going to be a society, if you're going to be as a collective, not as individuals in the modern world, you sadly you're going to have to go through it. I think it needs to be there. I think policing is best done by communities.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's understood in every country that has secure space that the closer the security apparatus is to the people who are policed, the better. Because then there's mutual trust between the citizens and the law enforcement. Law enforcement knows basically who in a community. The elements who are prone to crime are known because there is mutual trust between the apparatus and the community. There is a flow of information in both directions. People will give tips and intelligence to police units, and then the police would also alert the community to threats and so on to watch out for. So clearly, there's an evolution in that direction. We now have Benue State setting up its own security unit, just like several other states have done, and I believe that more states are going to do the same. But the question is, how do you ensure a kind of professional, ensure professional competence so that these units do not quickly turn into the kind of criminal outfits that the Nigerian police have become? The other day, there was a video that went viral of a police officer boasting that, where he was in Kogi State at his checkpoint was his market, and that he accepts bribes and would negotiate, in fact, dictate what you had to give him without any compulsion, without any sense of restraint, because he says, I'm in my market, and the police made this fanfare of dismissing that officer who was caught in that video. But so many different officers have done the same thing. In fact, it's the rule rather than the exception in numerous encounters with the police, is that they would demand a bribe and tell you that they have all the power and you better do as they say. So if you're going to make a fanfare of dismissing the one guy who went viral, for me to be impressed, you have to dismiss maybe 99% of the police force, because that's sort of what Nigerians feel, right?
That's a system.
Yeah. As states continue to articulate their own security responses to their own sort of law enforcement response to insecurity, the crisis of insecurity, we have to address the question of professional, competent training, so that these new outfits don't simply become another way of brutalizing innocent citizens.
Yeah. Well, eventually they might get there. But, that being said, this week is a much shorter episode because
I know,
for a number of reasons you're not feeling well, like every other thing. So
yeah, so I really apologize. I have, I'm not feeling well. Let's put it that way. It's not COVID. I've had COVID, but I feel quite under the weather, so it's been difficult. And so we thank you. We are excited, sick or not, to come to you week after week, and we hope that you're going to join us next week and for future episodes. Have a brilliant rest of the day.
all right.